Hello there everyone, I'm Peter Scove and this is Music is a Journey. Before we get started with today's video topic, I want you all to say goodbye with me to my Pentax 6.7. 6x7 medium format camera. I got this back in 1993, bought it used at the time. This camera has been with me several places around Canada, also the US. It's been to Argentina, Peru, Chile, Australia, New Zealand, Scotland, and of course many places around Japan, including up in the mountains. Many of the photos I took with this camera got published in magazines and in calendars, and of course I used them in some of my photo books as well. But I haven't used this camera now for probably something like 11 years, 10 or 11 years, and we're getting a little bit tight for money these days, so I thought I'd put it up on the auction, and it sold tonight. So, waiting for the person to put the money in and then pack this up along with a couple of lenses and send it off to a happy new home. My Pentax 6.7. Thank you for all your years of service and wonderful results. Oh yeah, I got a couple of awards and photo contests too. So then, actually I had in mind a little while back that I wanted to do a video where I pick out maybe a dozen songs or so from the 1980s that I just really love. I did a video a while back about songs from the 70s that just take me for a ride. Like every time I hear those songs I just get pumped or I just get really into the music. And I thought I wanted to do a video for the 60s and the 80s as well. I started preparing a whole stack of CDs and I was going to weed it down to about 12 songs or so rather than do, a few dozen. And then I didn't have time to do it. And the CDs have been sitting around, and I've been thinking they're kind of in the way. I should put them away, but I haven't done the video yet. So I thought, you know what, tonight I'm just going to do the video. So without having given it much more thought, I'm just going to take a look at what I prepared, probably something like 3 months ago by now, and let's see what we've got here. So, from Iron Maiden's Peace of Mind, probably my favorite Iron Maiden song, and that is Revelations. I really love that heavy guitar, those chords that just do that, da-da-dun, da-da-dun, da-da-dun. I love that guitar sound, and then this song switches between going through a really fast galloping Iron Maiden style, as well as the slower, more clean guitar Iron Maiden style. Bruce Dickinson's vocals on here, I just love them. I think he's done such an excellent job of the singing. The lyrics are intriguing, and yeah, I'll say it again, this I believe is my favorite Iron Maiden song and my favorite Iron Maiden album. Next up, I see I have picked out Peace Sells But Who's Buying, and I know it's because of The Conjuring. The first 3 songs on this are probably 3 of my most favorite Megadeth songs of all time, and The Conjuring I think is just brilliant. It actually starts off with this whole instrumental bit and some wicked lead guitar playing, and then, like a lot of the songs on this album, it gives us a really cool heavy riff, and then it changes gears and gives us another really cool heavy riff. Again, first 3 songs on this album I think are like in my top 10 Megadeth songs, maybe even in my top 5, but The Conjuring is always my #1 pick for listening to a Megadeth song. Keeping with the extreme metal sound here, we've got Creator's second album, Pleasure to Kill, and Riot of Violence has always been my favorite. In fact, it's my favorite Creator song, even though I actually only have 3 albums of theirs. Riot of Violence, I just loved it. It's an extended song. I don't remember how long it is. It's over 5 minutes, close to 6 minutes. It has a really awesome riff in it. It has a kind of slower section, and it goes in different stages. It feels like a really well-developed thrash metal song. And of course, because it's got the, Creator's kind of gruff vocal style. The album itself, when they went into the studio to record this, they brought a copy of Slayer's Hell Awaits and Possessed 7 Churches and told the producer, we want to make an album that sounds something like this. So I like to think of those 3 albums together. Ever since I read that, I think of those 3 albums together as a kind of trio. And in a way, all of them possessed more than the others, but all of them kind of pointing the way to death metal, where death metal would form off of thrash metal and become its own thing. These are like the very earliest steps. But yeah, Riot of Violence from Creator's Pleasure to Kill. Love that tune. I see we've got another extreme metal one here. This is Nuclear Assault's album Survive. I finally got this on CD earlier this year. Bought it used off I think it was Yahoo Auction, actually. But anyway, one of those, maybe a flea market site. I had this on cassette in the 80s, and I always wanted to get it on CD, but it was never reissued, actually. There's this, other albums were reissued, but not this one. And finally, I just looked for it and found somebody selling it. My favorite track of here has always been The Great Depression, with Brainwashed being a close second. I love the album. I love the uniqueness of the vocalist. I forgot his name now, but the vocalist's sound, the sound to his voice. And that song, The Great Depression, is just full of all these terrific riffs. It just moves. Like, they're, really good thrash metal songs just take you from riff to riff, and rhythm changes effortlessly. Effortlessly. That's what I'm trying to say. You know what I'm talking about. And yeah, it's just one of those songs. When I finally got this on CD and I heard that track again, I just felt this rush, like, oh, welcome back into my ears. All right, I guess we're going to step away from extreme metal. No, we're not. I got another one here. I can see it. Here we go. Razor, from their album Evil Invaders. I don't remember if this was their second or their third album. There was the Executioner's song, Evil Invaders. Or was there another one before the Executioner's song? I forget. But anyway, this was the first Razor album I ever had. And, oh man, what song was it now? Oh, I know what it is. Legacy of Doom. Actually, this whole album is just a really terrific thrash album. And the vocalist, he was with the band for the first 5 albums. He actually was not interested in singing thrash metal. He had more of a David Lee Roth style, that kind of high-toned, dry scream that David Lee Roth had in the early days. But he applied it to thrash metal, and it comes out, like, totally wicked. And that song, Legacy of Doom, again, like, really cool pace, really cool riff, and the chorus is just awesome. And then those high, dry screams, fantastic. So, yeah, one of those songs that just gives me a rush when I hear it. Now, are we moving away from the extreme metal? Well, I didn't actually, I don't know, maybe it's in here, maybe it's not. I will have to give a shout out to Metallica's Master of Puppets. It's not that I get a rush from it each time, but I just really love the structure of that song. And again, with these like really good thrash metal songs, how they can quickly move between riffs. And like it goes through that slower part and then goes into that like beautiful melodic guitar solo part, and then builds and starts getting kind of melodic but heavier. Or so I should say it's getting heavier but melodic. And then it just starts to bring us back to the more intense stuff, and then just switches back into the opening riff again. And just that whole structure, the meaning behind the lyrics and everything, I gotta give a shout out to that song, Master of Puppets, even though Metallica's first 3 albums, I'd say probably almost everything is wicked. But yeah, let's step away from the thrash metal here, and let's take a look at Y&T and Rock We Trust. I've probably waved this album in front of the camera a few times now over the last 5 years. Probably Mean Streak is in a way a little bit more meaningful to me because it was the first Y&T album I got, and I found out about the band on my own. But I really love In Rock We Trust. It's the step before they started to become more of a kind of a pop-ish hair metal type band. And here they still had that kind of bluesy, hard rock bluesy edge, but lots of melody. And I've talked about this song just recently, but Life, Life, Life still remains one of my favorite Y&T songs. And largely it's that wicked guitar solo, which I talked about in a previous video about firsts in music. And it's that guitar solo where he is flicking the tremolo switch or whatever back and forth while he's playing, and it just sounds wicked. But I love most of the songs on this album, and my absolute favorite song, favorite ballad of the 80s is also on here with This Time, a song that Dave Menichetti wrote for his wife, so all the more sweeter because of that. As far as I know, they're still together too. Right. Going back to some homegrown stuff here, this is Coney Hatch's second album, Out of Hand, and I talked about this in my what is it called? Rock Candy video, because the sound quality in here just gradually gets worse and worse until it's just like scratchy as hell, and it's awful. But the opening track is not really so much tainted by the sound quality. The opening track, Don't Say Make Me, is just a really good killer hard rock song with an attitude. Like, don't say make me, don't push me in my own yard. I just love that kind of stuff. Like, it's just, hey, So anyway, Don't Say Make Me from Coney Hatch's second album, Out of Hand. Just a terrific hard rockin' song with an attitude. Oh, it looks like we're staying home here. Yeah, coming up next, Helix. My favorite Helix song ever is, I gotta check the title here just to make sure I get it right, but Young and Reckless. That's right, the second track off here. Helix, I find, is more of a party hard rock band, and though I had 4 or 5 of their albums in the 80s, I like them, but I don't really love them. But Young and Reckless, and this album here, as a matter of fact, Walking the Razor's Edge, I've always had a kind of, special love for that. And Young and Reckless just has this really ripping guitar riff after a short guitar solo. So every time I hear that, it's just got such a wicked guitar riff after the guitar solo. If you can find it, what I say was Young and Reckless. I got the other song on my head now. Young and Reckless. Find that song on YouTube somewhere, wherever you want to find it, and check out that guitar riff after the solo. And the rest of the song is actually really cool too. I see here we're still staying in home country. This is Kick-Axe out of Saskatchewan. Gosh, I always like that when I find that, hey, that band is from Saskatchewan. Okay. But anyway, here we have Kick-Axe, their debut album Vices, and the opening track, Heavy Metal Shuffle. It sounds a bit like dorky in the name because, what is a heavy metal shuffle? But it's just such a ripping track. Just full of what you would imagine a 1984 heavy metal song should sound like, really. Not, with thrash metal taking off or, the extreme metal scene or hair metal, anything. It's just a good, solid, ripping, fun, but pounding heavy metal track, Heavy Metal Shuffle by Kick-Axe. A song still, when I hear it, it's like, damn, that's good. Okay. All right, I probably could have actually gone off the hard rock heavy metal track and named tracks by Pink Floyd or Alan Parsons Project, a couple others there from the 80s that were not metal that I really like. But it looks like we're sticking basically with hard rock and metal. Here we've got Black and Blue from their second album. I talked about this album in my video about albums produced by Bruce Fairbairn, actually, a couple of months back. It's hard to say which is the song I like best because I like almost every song off this album. Nature of the Beast, Miss Mystery, Rockin' on Heaven's Door, Bombastic Plastic, Without Love. Okay, I'd say half the album. Maybe a little bit more than half the album. Any song is fine. If I gotta choose one though, maybe Rockin' on Heaven's Door, because that opens the album and it's just a good, solid, melodic, hard rockin' tune. So let's go with that one, Rockin' on Heaven's Door. I knew I put this CD in this stack for a reason. Okay, so this is a compilation of Dio, including stuff with Elf, with Rainbow, with Dio, with Black Sabbath. And I think if it's going to be a Dio song, the song that got me from the very start was The Last in Line, the title track of the second album. I heard Rainbow in the Dark on the radio. Because I'd had Black Sabbath's Mob Rules, I thought it was a Black Sabbath song with synthesizer, and I just got really confused. I was 12 at the time, right? But I remember seeing the video for Last in Line, thought it was absolutely brilliant. And the song is just so great. And just, Ronnie Dio, what an incredible vocal delivery in that song. And then Vivian Campbell, a guitar solo, which is just really cool. And I remember after this album came out, there was an article in a music magazine that said, Vivian Campbell, the greatest guitarist you never heard of. And I thought, yeah, the way he soloed on that song, yeah. Of course, the Last in Line album was actually a really cool album. I liked it better than Holy Diver in a way. But anyway, yeah, Last in Line is my pick for Dio. And it seems, speaking of Dio, I do actually have Black Sabbath Mob Rules sitting in here. Probably it's got to be Sign of the Southern Cross, which I just love Dio's vocal performance in that, from his really soft, clear vocals to his more powerful vocals and the ominousness of the song. But it could also be Turn Up the Night, because that song just recently popped in my head. I remember I stepped outside and I heard thunder, and just suddenly, Rumble of Thunder popped into my head, the opening line of Turn Up the Night. And I remembered when my friend let me hear this when I was, 11, 12 years old for the first time. And that song, Turn Up the Night, wow, what a killer sound. Who is this band? Black Sabbath. All right. So that looks like that's the first stack. I hope I'm not taking up too much time here. It looks like I've got Skid Row in here. So it's probably got to be, what has it got to be? I Remember You, which is one of my top 3 favorite ballads of the 80s. This Time by YNT, Still Lovin' You by Scorpions, and I Remember You by Skid Row. I used to love to sing this in karaoke when I had the chance and try to get that last scream that Sebastian Bach puts out, that I remember you, and it just goes and finishes with that wow, wow, whoa, yeah, like, wow. I could actually never do it, but it was fun trying. So I Remember You from Skid Row, and what a wicked album this is anyway. There's a lot of really cool stuff on here. It's just been a while since I've listened to it. I hope Badlands is in here, because that, what's that song now? The song off the first Badlands album, there was a video for it too. I don't remember, but I still really love that too. But looks like next up I've got Aerosmith, Rockin' a Hard Place, my very first Aerosmith album. Interesting album, probably not one of the more popular ones because, Joe Perry's not here and Brad Whitford's not here. But I've always loved Bitches Brew. It's a bit crazy at times, but especially after that guitar solo, and then it goes into the acoustic bit, which it started with, and Steven Tyler singing, like, I've been drinking just to make this here song rhyme. It sounds like Bob Dylan, doesn't it? And then it comes back into the rock song, and it starts, you feel the tension building up, and then Steven Tyler lets out a scream, and the drums are going boom, 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 and then dun, 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 and the riff comes in, and it's just, wow, what a rush. So I think Bitches Brew is that one song that gets me the most every time off this album. Right, looks like I also put in Queensryche Rage for Order. Now I know this album is one of those albums, I did a video a couple of years back, albums that just really took me by surprise. I had the debut EP, I had The Warning, and then this came out, and the way the guys were dressed on this, they had like, okay, it was probably hard to see, but like the long leather trench coats, the hairstyles, and then this music was just like some kind of like metal from the future. It was just so different, and I don't know what track I was going to pick up here. Like, A Walk in the Shadows is just a killer song. I always liked that one, Gonna Get Close to You, because it was just really different. It wasn't metal, it was something else, and I thought, maybe there are some kids in my school who don't like metal who might like that song. Probably Screaming in Digital, or I Dream in Infrared. Okay, there's probably about 4 or 5 songs on this album that I would say I would pick, but maybe Screaming in Digital was the one that was my favorite back in the day. So it's probably got to be it. It's probably why I put the album in the stack. I should have reviewed this, but I thought, you know what? Let's surprise myself and see what I threw in here 3 months ago when I was thinking about this. And I can see I have Nazareth with 2XS and Sound Elixir in here. Surprise, surprise. Nazareth going off and doing something quite different from their 1970s output. But I know it's the song Love Leads to Madness from 2XS. That is, again, a band doing something that is not hard rock, not heavy metal, something quite different, and doing a wonderful job of it. I really love that song, Love Leads to Madness, and actually quite like a few other tracks on this album as well, 2XS. So yeah, Love Leads to Madness. Beauty. Okay. This one definitely had to be in here. My first Judas Priest album and the 4th cassette I ever bought. Okay, so the first one was actually given to me as a birthday present, but I wanted it. So anyway, yeah. I had 3 AC/DC, and next was Judas Priest. Alright, Screaming for Vengeance could easily go with the Hellion and Electric Eye, or the title track. Both the Electric Eye and the title track just totally impressed me every time. I really love that kind of intense metal that just keeps shifting gears. You get another riff and something else happens, and then back to this one and back to that one and a little insert and something else happens. Both those tracks are just totally ripping tracks. Still my favorite Judas Priest album of all time. Sin After Sin is a close second, probably because that was the second album of theirs I ever bought. But yeah, Electric Eye or the title track. Both of them absolutely brilliant metal songs from 1982. Okay, and I'm glad that this is here because I was almost going to start looking for it. Virgin Steel's second album, Guardians of the Flame. I had a cassette version which was issued as the Canadian version, which actually was heavier than the American version. This CD here has the American version, plus 4 extra songs, which were actually ones on the Canadian version, and some of the ones from the American version were, of course, omitted then. It was called Burn the Sun in Canada, and the title track, Burn the Sun, is just another ripping early 80s heavy metal track. But the song that I really love on here the most is a song called I Am the One. Starts off with some strummed acoustic guitar, very peaceful. David DeFay's got that really high voice of his. And then it just goes into like this really killer riff played by Jack Starr on the guitar, this and the band comes in and he does this ripping solo. David DeFay's voice is like going way up into the troposphere, and and it is just a totally ripping song. Fantastic guitar solo, wrapping up with some intense drumming and coming into that riff again. And David DeFay is just like really belting out the lyrics. So much power in that song. I love it. The only thing I would say about the album was that this was their second album and they were still recording it in their studio. So it isn't like the sound quality isn't like a professionally recorded sounding album. So it still is a little bit kind of, home recording on the edge a bit. But what a killer song and what a really killer album. Love this, Virgin Steel. Right, I knew there was a reason why the Deep Purple box had an empty spot in it. Perfect Strangers, and of course, as I could have easily picked 3 or 4 songs off of here, but I've always loved Perfect Strangers. Just the whole mood and atmosphere of the song, and then that they basically forego any kind of instrumental part with like a guitar solo or keyboard solo, and instead just have that dun 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 dun. I was like, that's cool. That's really, really cool. I love that. And they wrap up the song with that, and there's this high like whistling sound and Ian Gillan's doing the oh, whatever. I just really love the mood. It has this really kind of almost ominous mood, but again, nostalgic mood to it somehow. I love that track, Perfect Strangers. Well, okay, so I had another gap in the box the other day. I was wondering what was missing. Yeah, what happened to this album? Oh, that's right. I had it in my 80s stack. This is Here I Go Again. It's 3 Whitesnake albums together. It's Slide It In, Whitesnake, and Slip of the Tongue. Complete 3 albums on 2 discs or something. And of course, my pick, favorite Whitesnake song, one of my most favorite songs of the 1980s is Still of the Night. Again, longer song, takes time to develop. You've got like the hard rock bit, the wicked heavy rock riff, heavy blues-based rock riff. David doing like excellent vocals, his usual, I'm on the prowl, I'm a horny wolf type of style. But, and then it gets into that whole part where they take it down and it's just him doing these like, just like kind of like random vocalizations, And apparently he was just kind of like warming up in the studio and they recorded him doing that and then fit that into the song. And then, of course, you get the bowed guitar. I mean, who was doing bowed guitar in the 80s? I thought that was a 60s thing, but it's terrific. It's just one of those brilliant songs that really shows how a band of a kind of hair metal style band can put together a brilliant composition that is really surprising. Yeah, maybe in a way like Master of Puppets, where it also goes through some stages and then comes back to that main riff again. Structurally, there might be some similarities. But anyway, Still of the Night. Okay, Royal Court of China. Did I talk about these guys before? This was a band I just happened to see at the store one day. Nobody had ever heard about them around me. I picked it up and loved it. They only ever had 2 albums out in the 80s too. Yeah, and again, like a really ripping collection of kind of rough, tough, melodic songs with a nice bit of softness in places, and other times just like really like, punchy rock and roll tracks or some like heavier riffs like da 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 like this in some of the songs. Which song was it now? It must be This Time Around, which almost has, okay, I don't listen to The Cure, but if I did, I'd probably say, hey, This Time Around has a bit of a kind of Cure feel to it. It has this really lovely, it's a melodic song, it's a kind of a pretty song, and it has this really lovely part in the middle with these really gently picked, high-toned, clean guitar notes, and, the vocals coming in, and then finally coming back again, to the main part of the song. But honestly, this is another album where I could have picked at least 5 songs off of here and said any of these. I mean, there's another one here, what is it called here? Half the Truth. Oh man, what a killer rocking song that one is. So I could just say Half the Truth. Track number 2 on here is also my pick. But again, 4 or 5 songs off this album, easily winners for me. Royal Court of China, if you want to check them out. Right, okay, we must be coming to the end soon. Yes, last 3 here, and I'm not going to say anything else. There are other albums I could say, oh, by the way, I wanted to mention this. I'm not going to do that. We've got Wasted, Save Your Prayers. I've talked about this album in my favorite, melodic rock albums of the 80s. And what's it got to be? Sing Into the Night or Heaven Tonight? Either of those 2 songs. Just wonderful melodies. Just really wonderful sing-along melodies with a touch of sentimentalness to them. This album is no real ballads, but there is a mix between more harder rocking songs with a bit more punch to them, and then more melodic ones. So we've got Pete Way, formerly of UFO, on here, and actually we've got Paul Chapman coming in doing guitar work on this one here, because the guitarist from their first couple of albums, I think he left partway through the recording session, so Paul Chapman, if I remember the story correctly, yeah, Paul Chapman, there he is, yeah. So that's cool. And their original vocalist also left because he didn't like the more melodic style that they were going for. So this album was kind of made out of a bit of turmoil in the band. But it's a lovely album if you love very melodic hard rock, some piano, and great riffs, great guitar playing, beautiful chorus melodies. This is a great album to check out. So hey, right, we started with extreme metal, and I'm talking about these beautiful, catchy, hooky melodies in the choruses. Right, this is actually kind of unfortunate that I have this one. This is Balls to the Wall and Restless and Wild, selection of songs from each. And both albums are perfectly wonderful on their own. But at the time I thought, yeah, you know, Accept were never really one of my favorite bands, so as long as I get my favorite songs from both albums, it's good enough. And then I found some songs I really liked from both of those albums that are not on here. So I will eventually get the originals. But, of course, it is the song Balls to the Wall. Okay, Fast as a Shark is a strong contender, but Balls to the Wall is, again, one of those songs that I think is just wonderfully structured. They come in with the first guitar doing the riff. Second guitar joins in with the riff. The rest of the band joins in. We get the song going, and of course the chorus and everything, and it's a wonderful heavy metal song from, what, like 1983. And then after you get that whole part with the deep male chorus, that doing just the oh, whatever, right? And it's just really wonderful. And I remember a guy, a girlfriend of mine, it was a friend of hers in college, and he said he really didn't like metal, but he said there was this one metal song he heard with this male choir singing in low voices in the middle of the song, and he thought that was just really brilliant. And I thought, you must be talking about Balls to the Wall. But yeah, that is one of my standout favorite metal songs of the 80s. If I were to make like a 10-song compilation of what 80s metal, the best songs of 80s metal, I would probably not hesitate to put Balls to the Wall as the opening track. All right, and it looks like I have one more. Now, this is kind of funny. I put Voivod's War and Pain on here, and I know why. It's because of Warriors of Ice. That is just one of my favorite Voivod songs, Warriors of Ice. I've always loved that. I love half of this album and really like the other half. But you see, I just happened to be wearing a Killing Technology t-shirt, and I could have just as well have put Killing Technology in and chosen something like Order of the Black Guards or Forgotten in Space or the song Killing Technology. Half, again, that's an album where I love half the album and really like the other half. So either of those 2 albums could have been, but I see I put this one, so it's gotta be Warriors of Ice. Love that. Yeah. So there it is. That's what I had actually started working on as some of my favorite metal songs of the 80s. Turns out it's more than a dozen. It's probably more like 2 dozen. And again, I could have named probably another few dozen more metal songs, hard rock songs, as well as some non-metal and hard rock, some Pink Floyd, some Alan Parsons Project, you know, but whatever. there it is. That's what I had standing around, and I guess now I can put these CDs away back in their boxes. Thank you very much for watching. In the comments, tell me what are some of your favorite metal songs, or any songs from the 80s that you love. Hey, it doesn't have to be metal, right? And maybe I'll get around to doing a 60s one and a 90s one, and, you know, whatever.